Today we're diving into a Parisian Monday with Yeon Seo, who's a PhD candidate.
Okay.
And we're going to be listening in on a conversation that she had with an interviewer.
All right.
And we're going to be kind of uncovering how she navigates academia and current events and even a historical mystery.
Oh, cool.
So it should be a really interesting deep dive.
Yeah, it's like we get a glimpse into the mind of a scholar
Yeah.
and how they connect their research with their teaching and just the world around them.
Right. And so let's start with this particular Monday.
Okay.
It was a holiday in France, Armistice Day, commemorating the end of World War I.
Right.
But Yeon Seo didn't realize it was a holiday at first.
Oh, so she just thought it was a normal Monday.
Yeah.
That happens to the best of us.
Yeah. You get caught up in your work and you forget to look at the calendar.
Exactly. But this unexpected day off gave her some time to catch up on some tasks, including like prepping for the upcoming semester.
Okay.
And she has a new teaching partnership this semester. And she had a Zoom meeting with her partner earlier that day.
Oh, that's interesting. What can you tell me about this teaching partner?
Well, this will be their first time teaching, which is always a bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But Yeon Seo mentioned that her partner is younger and seems eager to learn, which I think speaks to her character.
Yeah.
She seems genuinely happy to share her experience and like guide her partner through the process.
Yeah, it's always so fascinating to see how those dynamics play out in academia.
Absolutely.
So what will they be teaching together?
They're splitting a 6-week course, each teaching for half of it.
Okay.
What's interesting is that Yeon Seo is flexible about which half she teaches. But her partner seems to have a preference for the first half.
It makes you wonder why.
I know, right?
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Now, on top of this shared course, Yeon Seo is also teaching 2 full classes throughout the semester.
Yes. And this is where we get a sense of her meticulous nature.
Okay.
She's done this before, but she admitted to still feeling nervous. Every group of students is different, she said.
Right.
Which creates a unique dynamic each time.
It's that element of the unknown.
Exactly.
No matter how much you prepare.
Yeah, you never know what energy the students will bring to the classroom.
Yeah. So what are these classes about?
She's teaching art history, and the students give presentations about jobs related to the field.
Okay.
Including archaeology.
Interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like a great way to get them thinking about the practical applications of what they're studying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's Yeon Seo's teaching style like? What stood out to you from the conversation?
Well, she seems very dedicated to research.
Okay.
Which comes through in her approach to teaching. She requires her students to create what's called a commented bibliography.
A commented bibliography.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure.
Because some of our listeners might not be familiar with that term.
Yeah, so it's more than just like listing your sources.
Right.
Students have to explain why they chose each source, summarize its key points, and then analyze how it relates to their research.
Wow, that's really depth.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great way to make sure they're really engaging with the material.
Exactly, and not just skimming through it.
Right.
Yeon Seo also mentioned that she doesn't have strict grading criteria.
Okay.
She can usually tell who put in the effort and who didn't.
Right. But there's always that middle group.
Yes.
The ones who make you really think about the grade.
Exactly. What do you do with those ones?
Yeah, what does she do in those cases?
She pays attention to details.
Okay.
For example, she requires students to submit their presentation outlines and PowerPoint files as PDFs. But she noted that surprisingly few actually follow those instructions.
It's always the simple things.
Right.
It's funny how that happens.
Yeah.
But it's that attention to detail that probably makes her such a thoughtful instructor.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the content.
It's about setting clear expectations and helping students develop good research habits.
Now, speaking of helpful tips, something occurred to me while listening to her talk about presentations.
Okay.
I think Yeon Seo, and perhaps even you, listener, could benefit from some of the newer AI tools that are out there.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
No, well, sometimes you need to stretch out a presentation a bit.
Okay.
Maybe to fill a specific time slot.
Right.
And there are AI tools like ChatGPT that can help with that.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
You could give ChatGPT your existing presentation content, and it could generate additional information that's relevant, but not essential.
Exactly.
Just a way to add a bit of fluff.
Right.
Without sacrificing the core message.
That's the idea.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, it could be a valuable tool for both instructors and students.
I love how these conversations always spark new ideas.
Me too.
And connections. Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to that teaching partnership. You mentioned that Yeon Seo seems happy to mentor her partner.
Yeah.
Do you think that collaborative spirit is something that shines through in her teaching as well?
That's a great question, and if we connect that to her meticulous nature, we can start to paint a picture of how she might approach this partnership.
Uh-huh.
It's not just about teaching the material, it's about creating a supportive learning environment
Right.
for both her students and her partner.
It's about fostering a sense of shared discovery,
Exactly.
which is essentially what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Exploring these different aspects of Yeon Seo's Monday.
Exactly. Now, let's move beyond the academic bubble and see how Yeon Seo connects her intellectual curiosity to the wider world.
Okay.
She mentioned listening to a radio show that was discussing some current events.
Okay, this sounds interesting. What caught her attention?
It was a press conference given by the South Korean president.
Okay.
He was addressing some controversies surrounding his family and trying to defend their actions.
Now, remind me, Yeon Seo is originally from South Korea, right?
She is.
Okay.
So it's not surprising that she'd be following the story closely.
Right. It makes you wonder if her personal connection to the events adds another layer of complexity
Totally.
to her analysis.
It certainly has a personal dimension.
Yeah.
Now, the radio commentators seem to believe that this press conference might mark the beginning of the president's decline.
His decline.
Yeah, like in popularity.
Oh, okay. Why is that?
Well, it seems that many people didn't find his explanations convincing.
Oh.
There was also an incident involving a foreign journalist who asked the president a question in Korean, but even though the journalist had made the effort to speak Korean, the president claimed he could understand and dismissed the question.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the importance of communication, especially on a global stage.
Absolutely.
Even under pressure, those small gestures of respect can make a big difference.
For sure.
Okay, so we've got Yeon Seo navigating the world of academia,
Yep.
grappling with the complexities of global politics. Is there anything else that stood out to you from this Monday in Paris?
Actually, there's one more piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
Yeon Seo discussed a historical article from 1965 that at first both she and the interviewer were baffled by.
Intriguing. Why the confusion?
The title of the article used a French word they weren't familiar with.
Okay.
It turned out to be mirage, which refers to a type of airplane, the voodoo jet.
Okay, so a mysterious airplane. What's the story here?
Well, the article described an incident during the Cold War where a U.S. military plane was caught taking photographs over a sensitive area in France.
Now that sounds like the beginning of a spy thriller.
Right.
Where exactly in France was this plane flying over?
It was a hydrogen bomb fuel plant. Talk about a sensitive area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that this happened during the Cold War makes it even more interesting, right?
Yeah, this was a time of so much tension between the U.S. and the Soviet Union,
Exactly.
both wanting to be the world power.
And France, under President Charles de Gaulle,
Right.
was also trying to figure out its own place, asserting its independence on the world stage.
Yeah, so de Gaulle was really determined to develop France's own nuclear weapons.
Right.
But the United States wasn't happy about that at all.
Of course not. They saw it as a threat to their own nuclear dominance.
So you have this backdrop of global power struggles.
Yeah.
And then suddenly there's this U.S. military plane flying over a French hydrogen bomb fuel plant.
I know, it's like something straight out of a spy movie.
So how did both sides react to this?
Well, the French government thought it was spying, but the U.S. said it was an accident, that the plane just veered off course. The article presented both sides of the story, but there was no clear answer.
Wow, so the mystery remains.
Exactly.
It's amazing how something that seems so simple, like a plane going the wrong way,
Right.
could become such a big deal during the Cold War.
It really shows how tense things were.
So what did Yeon Seo think about all this?
Well, she found it really interesting. She connected it to de Gaulle's determination to build France's nuclear arsenal, even though the U.S. didn't want him to.
Right.
She even mentioned this famous quote from de Gaulle where he compared Paris to New York City, saying that France had the same right to protect itself as the United States.
That's a powerful statement.
It really shows how committed he was to French autonomy.
Yeah, and how he didn't want to give in to pressure from other countries.
Exactly. And ironically, this incident, whether it was intentional or not, probably made de Gaulle even more determined.
Oh, how so?
It reinforced his belief that France needed to be self-reliant and that they couldn't depend on other countries for their security.
It shows how miscommunication and mistrust can really escalate tensions.
Absolutely, even between allies.
What's interesting is that this happened so long ago, but it still feels relevant today.
I think it speaks to how those Cold War fears are still with us today.
Yeah, right. We still worry about nuclear weapons.
Right, and this incident reminds us about how delicate the balance of power is. And how misunderstandings can have really big consequences.
It also shows how important clear communication and diplomacy are.
Yes, especially when dealing with complicated international relationships.
So even though this U.S. plane incident might seem like a small thing in history,
Right,
it gives us valuable insights into the problems we still face today.
for sure. Now let's shift gears for a second and go back to Yeon Seo's personal experience on this Parisian Monday.
Okay.
We've talked about her getting ready for teaching and her thoughts on current events and history,
Right.
but what else was going on with her that day?
Well, even though it was Armistice Day,
Yeah.
Yeon Seo spent a lot of time inside working.
Like many of us academics do.
True. But what I found interesting was that she didn't even realize it was a holiday at first.
Oh, that's fine.
The interviewer had to remind her.
That happens to the best of us.
We get so focused on our routines that we forget what's going on in the world outside.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that even the busiest scholars need a break sometimes.
So what was she working on?
She was putting together a list of periodicals for her research, which she said was pretty tedious.
I can imagine that can be very time-consuming.
It was a list of every periodical published in Paris during a specific year.
Wow.
And she had to go through each one to make sure she had the access numbers so she could get them at the library.
It's a lot of work.
It just shows how much detail goes into historical research.
All about the little things.
Right. Each little piece adds up to a bigger understanding of the past.
And speaking of little things, we were talking earlier about Yeon Seo's teaching partner and how they wanted to teach the first half of the semester.
Yes.
I'm so curious about that. Do you think there's a reason for that choice?
It's definitely interesting. Maybe they like to set the stage instruction of the course.
Okay.
The first half of the semester is usually about laying the groundwork, explaining what's expected and how the presentation should be done.
Right. It's like the heavy lifting.
Exactly. And maybe Yeon Seo's partner enjoys that challenge,
Yeah.
that chance to shape how the course starts.
It makes you wonder how their different teaching styles will work together.
Right.
Yeon Seo is very meticulous and detail-oriented,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe her partner is more energetic and structured.
They could be a great team.
That's a good point, and it goes back to the idea of collaboration,
Right.
which seems to be important to Yeon Seo both in her research and her teaching.
It's a good lesson for all of us.
Yeah, we learn best when we work together,
Absolutely.
share ideas, and challenge each other's views.
Now, before we go to the last part of our deep dive, I have a question for you, the listener.
Okay.
We've heard Yeon Seo's thoughts on teaching current events and a Cold War mystery. What connections have you made between these different topics? What has stood out to you the most? Take a moment to think about that, and we'll be back soon to finish up our exploration of Yeon Seo's Parisian Monday.
Welcome back to our deep dive into this Parisian Monday with Yeon Seo. It's so interesting how her thoughts on teaching and current events and this Cold War incident all come together. It creates such a tapestry of intellectual curiosity.
It's like we're getting a peek inside her mind,
Ah.
seeing how she connects different ideas and finds meaning in them.
Right, and we still haven't figured out why her teaching partner wanted to teach the first half of the semester. Any more thoughts on that?
Well, I think it shows a key difference in how they approach teaching. Yeon Seo thinks the second half is easier because by then the foundation has been laid.
Right.
The expectations are clear, the format is set, and her role becomes more about guiding the students through their presentations.
It's about letting them take charge,
Mm.
which fits with her collaborative style.
Exactly. But for her partner, maybe that initial stage of setting the tone and the structure,
Yeah.
that's where they excel. It's about creating the framework for learning.
So maybe it's not so much about avoiding the hard work,
Right.
but about taking on a different kind of challenge. Right.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe that's what makes this partnership work. Two different perspectives, two different strengths coming together.
To create a really unique learning experience.
Right. It's like that U.S. plane incident we talked about.
Yeah.
Two different views, two different ways of seeing the same event.
Which led to all that tension.
And just like in international relations, communication is key.
Yeah.
And being willing to see things from another point of view is crucial in any collaboration.
We've covered so much in this deep dive.
We have.
We've explored how meticulous Yeon Seo is with her research, her thoughtful approach to teaching, and her ability to connect past events to present-day issues.
Yeah. What stands out to you most about her?
Definitely her thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
She approaches everything with curiosity and a desire to understand things on a deeper level.
It's true.
It's clear in how she talks about her research, her teaching, even the news she follows.
I think we could all learn from that.
Yeah, that willingness to stop and think and make connections.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with something to think about.
Okay.
If things that seem small, like a plane going off course or a president saying something dismissive, can have huge impacts on the world,
Right.
how can we be more like Yeon Seo and apply that thoughtfulness to our own actions,
Yeah.
our interactions, and how we contribute to the world? It's something to consider as we go about our own Mondays, wherever we are.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep making those connections.